Hi folks, hope you're doing well. Hi, yes. Well, today we're talking again about, well, I'm talking again about, well, God's talking for me, either way. Well, hopefully the latter way. About consequences again. Well, God just reminded me that there's been a number of different pushes. There's been the push about who you're serving, that your life doesn't belong to you anymore. That was one push. And there was 10, 15 videos about that. There's been about 20 videos about be led and guided by the Holy Spirit. And now the push is on consequences. So we've had your life doesn't belong to you, which means you need to serve God. That's about what we need to do. Being led by the Holy Spirit is the how. Consequences is why. As I said in one of the videos, and it is a very clear point. If changing who you are is going to be tough, most people will not go with that. They will not agree with that unless they understand the consequences of not doing that. So, for example, if you've had a number of relationships that were bad and basically identical bad, and you finally realise, well, 1 second, I've had all these relationships break up and I've never at any point in time bothered to try and work out why. Maybe I should do that. But then you realise that, well, hold it. Yeah, that's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of emotion. It's going to be tough to do because I'm going to have to look at me and discover things about me that I won't necessarily like. If you focus on how hard it's going to be, you won't do it. If you focus on the reason why you need to do this, then you'll do it. Then you'll go through because you understand the consequences. Because obviously, if you've been in all that sort of relationships that have been bad, you want to make sure the next one isn't like that. You need to spend time to learn what's going on here in relationships. What are you bringing into relationships that's making it like that? Now, most people wouldn't even get anywhere near that conversation with themselves because obviously if relationships are bad, that's someone else's fault. It's nothing to do with me. Relationships breaking up, it's got nothing to do with me at all. No, of course not. Me being to blame for that? No. Well, there's no way, shape or form. I did everything I could. Well, the reality is, no. By doing everything you could, it means after the last relationship you had exploded, like this one, you should have taken the time to deal with whatever baggage you had, either from that relationship or that you keep on taking into relationships that cause them to explode. At least have a proper look, because you might be right. Maybe it's not you. But it is you if you keep on choosing people that are like that. So why are you choosing people that are like that? Understand the consequences. Well, it's like, training. Doing any sort of weight training, anything like that, especially weight training, if you're going to be doing heavy. You've got to build yourself up mentally before you do it because it's going to be hard work and you're going to be sore afterwards. Certainly if you haven't done it for a while, you're going to be sore and it's going to be hard work. That's the reality. you may find that you're a bit lower than what you were before as well, which is a bit sort of, really? Great. It's a bit deflating, isn't it, really? But you've got to get yourself mentally in the right position to do that. Otherwise, you won't be able to do it. Same as everything. You've got to get yourself mentally in the right position. So if you look at the consequences of, that gives you the motivation to say, I'm going to do this. I'm going to spend whatever time I have to focus on doing this to make sure that next time, I'm in a better position. Same as you can apply that to work. You can apply it to church. You can apply it to any relationship you have. Consequences go in so many other areas. But consequences are everywhere in life. Everywhere in life. There's that quote, what you reap is what you sow. But that is pretty much accurate. I wouldn't say it's 100% because it isn't. Because there are a lot of times that you do good and you don't reap good. You can still reap absolute crap even when you do good. And there's a lot of people that do bad that don't seem to reap bad. At least not while they're living. They will when they get judged. But while they're living, no, they don't seem to have any consequences, really. But certainly you see that when you look at the people in positions of power and decisions they make. I mean, some of those decisions can be atrocious. Really atrocious. And yet there's no consequences to them at all. They just do it. Well, the reason why is because they own this world. They own the police, they own the judges, they own the lawyers, they own everything. Everything they own. These people in power, they own the whole lot. Okay, I'm not talking about the politicians. They're not the ones in power. It's the ones in the big businesses. They're the ones who run the world. They're the decision makers. They're the ones who decide which politicians they're going to support. Whichever ones they support, they're the ones who get in power. So for those people, there are no consequences, or there seem to be no consequences. Well, the reason is because they own this world. Now, it's not saying there won't be consequences on them, but there haven't been as yet. Although the Me Too movement has brought some consequences to those sort of people. Certainly the sort of people that owned the film industry, there have been consequences to them. Only recently. For decades and decades and decades, there was no consequences to them at all. There has been recently, but only a few. You have to say, is that just a tip of the iceberg? Yeah. It's quite likely that they've thrown a few of theirs to the wolves in order to protect the rest. That is most likely what's gone on. As a token effort. Yeah. You want blood? Okay, you can have him. There you go. The rest of us, we're okay. We'll just continue what we're doing, but we'll distract you with him. There you go. They're clever people. They really are. They're quite clever people. So So what you reap and what you sow, not necessarily. It doesn't necessarily correlate to that, especially if you're talking about people that are wealthy. Well, for example, you have when I talk about the police force are owned by the rich and powerful, you look at when there's riots and when there's protests, certainly when the protest goes a bit righty, the police don't seem to care at all when the people are in poor districts rioting. As soon as they go anywhere near the richer districts, the police are out in force. Like in the UK, you saw rioters from Black Lives Matter and the environment one that turned violent, where they were pushing the police back and the police were running away. That was when it was in a poorer area. As soon as they got to the richer area, the police didn't run away anymore. No. They wouldn't dare run away and allow the poor people to damage the property of the rich. Oh, no. Oh, no, you can't do that. No. You have to understand, you know, who owns the system. You think the law is fair? No. I say that there's been films made of it where I think Tefal, I don't know if it's Tefal, but Tefal uses the thing in their products. Yeah, where they have these products which are non-stick. Well, part of the thing they use in non-stick gets in your food and is poisoning you. The company that puts this stuff on there knows this, has been doing it for decades, but because they are so incredibly wealthy, they just keep doing it. Nobody can do anything about it. The politicians won't touch them, even though they're basically poisoning about 90% of the population of the earth with their products. And nothing's done about it. They've been fined, but of course the fines are nothing. They can afford that. That's like basically, you know, someone coming to me and saying, you've got to pay 2 pence as a fine. Okay, here you go. Have 10. Have 10p. I don't care. Have 10p. If it's only 2 pence, then why do I care? I'm going to keep on doing it, aren't I, really? Yeah. Of course. Yeah. One of the cars that ended up being taken away for spares and repairs had loads of 1 and 2p coins in the one of the little areas that you saw stuff in. I didn't bother to empty it. Don't care. 1p's and 2p's. Who cares? Now that's like these firms. The fines are exactly like that. They have no concern about it at all. And the people issuing the fines, they know exactly what it's going to do. Nothing. Nothing whatsoever. They know that. They do it as a token. That's all it is, as a token. Just to make the people believe that that company's been punished. It hasn't. That company should be destroyed. Absolutely destroyed. Because part of it, look, if you've got that company still producing that product that goes on to frying pans and saucepans and stuff like that to make them non-stick, no one else is really going to be bothering to create anything else that can do the job, because at the moment they have the market. Even though they're poisoning people, they have the market, right? Because they've already got their stuff produced. It's already there. They can do it so much cheaper than if you provide something else. If you figure out something else that, even if it gets in your food, it won't poison you, but it make everything non-stick. Fantastic, right? You won't be able to do it. You won't be able to afford to do it. Guarantee you one thing. If you figure out you can do it, you can afford to do it, that company will buy you out to stop you from doing it, to stop your product ever getting on the market. Which is why they should have been crushed. Because who cares? For a couple of months or maybe a year, we have saucepans and frying pans that aren't exactly non-stick. And so what? So what? It stops poisoning people. Yeah, good thing, right? thumbs up, give a few likes to that, yeah. But no. So yeah, consequences is only really there for the poor. If you're poor, you see consequences. Okay? That's the reality. You certainly see consequences of bad behavior if you're poor. Not necessarily consequences of good behavior. Of bad, yes. Of good, sometimes. Yeah. Well, put it this way, you're not likely to see good consequences if you keep on doing bad things. You're far more likely to see good consequences if you do good things. But you won't necessarily see them all the time. Same as you won't necessarily see bad consequences all the time. But they are there. It's like of such. I was thinking the other day about it. Do you need to curse people? Yeah, if people are a pain in the arse to you, do you need to curse them? Yeah. You look at any of these Reddit channels, you've got these entitled people, you've got these pro-revenge videos and this sort of stuff, nuclear revenge. If you're in that situation where you've got someone like that, either a colleague, a boss, a neighbor, whatever, a family member, like that, do you need to curse them? Well, because the Lord cursed that fig tree, didn't he? When that fig tree wasn't bearing good fruit, the Lord cursed that tree to die. So, do we need to curse people? No. That fig tree could not curse itself. That's the reason that fig tree was cursed by the Lord. Because it would just keep on going and there would have been really no consequences to it. It would have just kept on growing and being there doing nothing. That isn't the case with people. People, generally speaking, don't need to be cursed because they curse themselves. They always curse themselves in the end. In the end. So most of the time, consequences do come on people because they curse themselves in the end. I've said before about habit. You know, people get into a habit. Look at all these Reddit videos. These people that are nasty people, that are very unpleasant people, they are that way because they've grown up being that way. And they've learned that it's okay to do that. You see, in these videos on YouTube, certainly ones that are pro-revenge, nuclear revenge, that's when you see the consequences come home to these people. And the stories are about the consequences that come onto these people. But that's where you see the people have cursed themselves because they don't need to be cursed. Eventually, they come across the person who is willing to go the extra mile to punish those people. That wouldn't have happened. If they had stopped doing what they were doing a long time before, it wouldn't have got to that point. You see a boss who is a nasty boss, he's not paying his employees, and eventually the employee ruins his complete business. The employee knows that this boss is also having an affair on his wife, so goes and tells the wife that he's having an affair on the wife. And in the end, this boss's life completely implodes and he ends up working at McDonald's years later because his life is completely falling apart. He lost his home, he lost his wife, he lost his children, he lost his business, he lost everything. But he'd have been like that for years until he did it to one employee who decided, right, that's it. Enough's enough. I'm not going to put up with this anymore. That's what I say about you get into a habit of doing things. That's okay. Because most of the time, you're not going to come across the sort of person who's going to do that sort of thing. But eventually you may very well do that. But you've got your cancel culture now. So anything you say online, anything you say on Twitter, Facebook, people are watching. People are waiting. Guarantee you something. You get too cocky that they know that there aren't consequences to your behavior. You're going to say stuff and it's going to cost you big time. Yeah, what you say and what you do, it could cost you big time. Well, look, there is a spiritual thing going on here. What a lot of people don't understand, they think, oh, if I'm of this world and the world belongs to the devil, then the devil is not going to attack me because I'm doing things his way, right? Wrong. Wrong. Oh, the devil loves playing games with his subjects. Absolutely loves playing games with his subjects. Will give you the impression that there are no consequences, and he will pull the rug from under you. He will use whatever tactics you use against you, but in a far bigger way. It is remarkable. Yeah, that TV program, The Stand, there's a character in there who was Harold Lauder, I think is the character in it, who was a quite unpleasant character all the way through. Because Harold Lauder fancies Fran. He's always liked Fran. Fran doesn't really like Harold. They're friends, but nothing more than that. So, of course, he gets jealous when she then meets up with someone else, has a relationship with someone else, falls in love with someone else, sort of thing. So he goes a bit on the dark side. But in the end, he bombs the meeting of the people that Fran is sort of now with, because he's got this hatred inside. But then the devil makes promises to him, basically saying to him, if you be with me, you're on this side right now, but you come over to my side, I'll take care of you. I'll make sure that nobody ever turns their back on you if you're with me. If you're with me, Fran would be with you. So, of course, he then does what this Antichrist character wants and bombs this meeting, killing loads of people. As he's riding off with Nadine, this is in the 94 version, as he's riding off with Nadine, suddenly this Antichrist character appears in front of him in the road, so he swerves to avoid running him over and goes heading off a cliff. Well, that's quite clever, because that is showing exactly what the devil does. Brings people in, don't worry, I'll take care of you, don't worry. You do things my way, I'll take care of you. And then, no, I mean, that's where all these revenge stories come in, these pro-revenge and nuclear revenge stories. It's where these people have got comfortable doing things to people that are out of order. There was one I just watched and I clicked on it because it said, neighbour took our dog, so we took their kids. It's got dog in it, so there you go. I'm on that really, really quickly. But it ended up, this neighbour was a complete blinking nightmare. You know, she had, I mean, how many kids she had, I don't know, but in a house, you find out during the story that there were like 3 kids sharing a bunk bed. And there were a number of different bunk beds. So how many kids this woman had, I don't know. But to say they were out of order is an understatement. They were stealing electricity from this family. They were sending their kids over, and their kids would break all the toys and be quite disgusting. And at one point, the kids stole all the fruit from the fruit bowl. And then when the mother confronted the kids and said, please don't do that, the 3-year-old kid called this woman, not their mother, but this from the other household, called that mother a bitch, or an effing bitch. So, oh, okay. Well, so the family gets a massive bill for $800 for electric. So they contact the electric company, who finds that the neighbours are stealing their electricity. So they basically unplug the neighbours. Neighbours get quite annoyed about it, so they keep on trying to steal electricity. They keep on unplugging them. Neighbours eventually steal their dog, report their dog for attacking their children, even though their dog didn't attack their children. Had to go, the dog was taken in by the pound. Family got home, no dog gone missing. Eventually they found out it was at the pound. It was already being put up for adoption. So they had to re-adopt their dog, when the mother now said, right, enough's enough. So she sent her kid, one of her youngest kid, in to play with the kids in this house and to spy. And then she sent CPS round to the home. So the mother lost all her kids. Mother then had a fight with her father, whose house it was. She was then kicked out. She didn't have to do the ultimate nastiness. The family had put up with a lot. They had. She could have stopped at any point in time. She didn't. She lost everything as a result. Now, as I say, that's where the devil is sort of on your side, and where, you know, you're doing all these nasty things and there seems to be no consequences. Bonnie and Clyde sort of thing, you know. But then, as with Bonnie and Clyde, suddenly you come to a cliff. And you're going over. Because, yeah, although you may be doing the things the devil's way, and although you may think, if you were thinking about it, which of course most people don't, that the devil should be happy with you if you're doing things his way. No, what the devil wants is to torment. The devil wants to torment people. So he'll allow you to do things a certain way for a while, and then he'll just, bang. He'll just take everything from you. He will bring someone into your life who is going to do that. Whether that's the devil or God, I'm not sure. I think it probably is the devil, because revenge is not God's way. Certainly nuclear revenge is quite unpleasant. There's been some nuclear revenge ones, and they have been really bad. But again, those show consequences in the most extreme manner. And wow. Some of those nuclear revenge ones are horrendous. I've done videos about them in the past. I mean, they are really, really tough. I mean, the levels of hurt that these people have gone through that makes them do what they do is just incredible. And what they do is equally incredible. Incredibly nasty. But the point of that is, those are the consequences. You reap what you sow. I say, if you people, this is why, even as a Christian, you've got to do self-examination on a regular basis, because you could easily slip into a behavior that could be bad and negative and mean that you're going to face terrible consequences in the future. Because guarantee you one thing, most of the people that are doing nasty things to other human beings, they don't believe that what they're doing is nasty. They believe what they're doing is right and is okay, because they've grown up believing that it's okay to do that. They just haven't checked themselves, and that's the thing. People don't. long as life seems to be going okay, people don't bother to check themselves until they come across someone who's going to check them, who's going to do the checking, basically. And that's when you get the petty revenge, pro-revenge, or nuclear revenge. They all are talking about consequences, the consequences that come in for bad behavior. The thing of it is, there are different levels of bad behavior, but there will be consequences for that. There was one that was actually quite, it was definitely revenge, but quite funny to a certain degree. This person had a roommate who was a bit dirty, would be the way to put it. She was quite messy, this roommate. Apparently she'd even got a friend to pee in a bottle because she was going to get someone else to drink it, pretending it was some sort of smoothie. But she left that bottle in the fridge, so when it was time to move out, she left all that there, and her room was full of old bits of food, and because she smoked, it was all her cigarette butts and ash, and everything was in there, bits of food she hadn't eaten. It was a complete mess, and she had left that for her roommate to basically clean up. So her roommate said, right, sod that. I'm going to give it back to her. Her roommate had a spare key for this woman's car because she had borrowed a car a few times. So she went and put most of that stuff in the woman's, just tipped it out the woman's boot. But then the bottle of pee, she tipped over the woman's passenger seat of the car. Of course, the woman went absolutely ballistic. But the one who gave her all the stuff back, she'd done a bit of community service because she realised there was a bit of a clause in the law where she could just do that. But yeah, that's the thing. And the woman who was a bit untidy, a bit dirty, she'd grown up believing she could do that. She probably had parents who had just done everything for her. Just allowed her to just have an incredibly messy room. The parents had gone in and cleaned the room for her and cleaned up after her all the time. She'd never had to be responsible. And there you go. Consequences have now come back and bit her in the arse. And she's now got to deal with that. Whether she had learned from that, I don't know. Probably not. Probably not. And that's the thing. That's why I said quite often, God has to try and get your attention by doing the same thing over and over and over and over again. Same sort of consequence. Because said about relationships, people break out of bad relationships but don't spend the time trying to examine why they keep on getting in bad relationships. What is it about them? So when the consequences come, quite often people just blame, oh, that person who hurt me was bang out of order. How dare they behave in such a manner? Rather than, did I deserve that? Because, of course, if you ask, did I deserve that, then you might find out you did. And if you find out you did deserve it, you might deal with that. And then you won't have to face it again. But if you don't ask the question, you're not going to find out that, yeah, you did deserve it. And you're going to have to go through it all over again. And the consequences could be worse next time. Because if the consequences at that level didn't get your attention, then most likely they're going to have to be worse, aren't they? All right. That's the thing, folks. There are going to be consequences. There are. Because during the day, we make decisions and we do things, we say things to other people. And each of those things we do and say will have a consequence of a certain level. Now, most of the consequences are so minor, we don't even notice them. 90-odd% are just incredibly minor. Can be negative, can be positive. Yeah, you smile at someone and sometimes they smile back, so therefore that's a consequence that you most of the time just wouldn't notice. You hold the door open for someone, they say thank you. Again, that's a good seed sown. When you get the consequence of that is good, they say thank you, that's good. But again, something you don't notice that much. Yeah, some of the bad ones, you could be you don't, for example, you've got a car waiting to turn. You could easily just let them turn. It's not really going to be so much for you, but you don't. Right? That's a negative seed sown that you don't really see a consequence for. That's going to be a very typical one. I mean, you get the more obvious. You beat someone in a situation of a road incident where someone's cut you off or someone's going a bit slow and you beat them, or someone isn't going with the lights turn. That person then flips you off. You've done something negative. They've done something negative. You're more likely to notice that, but only just. Not really. Not really. So all day we're doing things, we're sowing seeds and we're reaping. It's just we don't notice the sowing and the reaping. But that's what I say for Christians. If you're a Christian couple, help each other to do your self-MOTs. To examine yourselves, to deal with the things, the habits that may have crept in. Get rid of them. Certainly the bad ones, get rid of them. Well, for example, when you're driving, it's not your job as a driver to tell all bad drivers that they're bad drivers. It really isn't. There are a lot of bad drivers on the road. There really are. But it's not your job to tell them that they're bad drivers. Doing that can get you into trouble. Big trouble. Most of the time it doesn't, but it can. I mean, again, that's completely negative, because in the end, you're not doing it because you're really thinking of road safety, because you're thinking of other drivers. You're doing it mainly because you're saying, I can drive better than that. I'm a far better driver than you, and I've got to let you know that. Negative. And that can result in a lot of road rage sort of things going on. Generally speaking, not a good idea to do that, really. Not at all. Potentially, especially in countries where they have guns. Not a good idea. Not in any way, shape or form. Try and keep your emotions and your anger in check. Certainly when in a vehicle. Oh, there's some weird things that are going on in vehicles, where people have just got a bit of road rage, and they've actually physically, when people have been crossing the road, you've had sometimes drivers and cars will just edge their car forward enough to actually bump a pedestrian, to tell the pedestrians to quicken up a bit. And it's like, what are you doing? As I say, these Reddit things are full of them. Full of stories like that. These people and what they do is crazy. But these are all negative seeds that are being sown that have negative consequences. Although, as I say, most of the time you just don't notice them. You notice the big ones. We've got to start noticing the consequences. We really do, because it's going to make a heck of a difference as to how we live our lives. If we can think about the consequences to our behaviours, then maybe we can live better. be better. As I said at the beginning of it, you know, if you're going to get right with God, and you have to understand, sometimes getting right with God can be a long, arduous, painful process. And to do that, you've got to understand the consequences of not doing it. You've got to understand what you can gain and what you can lose. So by not doing it, what you lose. By doing it, what you gain. You're never going to fully understand what you're going to gain, but you can certainly understand what you're going to lose. So that's something you've got to look at. So consequences are a thing that the church should have been speaking about for a long, 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 long time. Certainly if the church had been speaking about that sort of stuff, there's no way, shape or form that the church would have continued to employ the wrong people to run the church, because they'd been thinking about the consequences of doing that and they wouldn't have done it. And that comes across to me as the most obvious thing. Clearly, it's not obvious to everyone. But to the people that weren't doing it, clearly not obvious. Then again, yeah. We're in a time now when I think consequences are going to be something that people are going to start to look at. Certainly Christians, and with regards to the church, I think consequences are things that people are going to be looking at. And that's a good thing. Certainly in moving forwards, we need to understand the reasons why we do it. As I say, the consequences are you get molded by God to a vessel that God can use. And the consequence is that maybe there are people in your community that can benefit from that. Maybe there are people in your community who are going through some incredibly difficult stuff, who can benefit from what God is doing through you. That's the point. So if your life doesn't belong to you anymore, it belongs to God, then that's the purpose of it. That's the purpose of it. And if you've got a friend or a partner who helps you to see the consequences, value that person. That person is someone you should value immensely. Anyone who speaks truth in your life is someone who should be valued. Casting Crowns did a song, Love Them With the Truth, and basically that song was talking about, it's not about saying what the person wants to hear, it's about saying the truth, because that's what they need to hear. And if you love that person, then you're going to be giving them what they need to hear, because that's what matters. But I say that's when you are a God pleaser, not a people pleaser. Because the people pleaser is always going to be looking at the consequences of not pleasing people, which means that people won't be pleased with you. So therefore, that's the consequence. If you're a people pleaser, you're constantly looking at, I've got to be nice to this person and say what this person wants me to say, so that they're pleased with me. Yeah. The problem is then, is that, you've got people pleased with you, but then God won't be. Because you're focusing on pleasing people. You're serving people, you're not serving God. So they all go together. Who are you serving? Who does your life belong to? So who does your life belong to, therefore who you're serving? Be led and guided by the Holy Spirit. If you're being led and guided by the Holy Spirit is going to be helping you to understand the consequences of bad decisions. So the way I put things together in this one certainly may not be quite the way that I should have done, but certainly the point of talking about consequences is very important right now. Always has been important, but it certainly is important now. I mean, the Bible itself is full of consequences. Full of them. Read the stories in the Bible, even read the words of the Lord. You've got consequences going all the way through. All the way through. Yeah, there was a man by the water. You know, the water where, if you were the first one in, you could be healed. That water. The Lord was there. On that occasion, the man looked to the Lord, and when the Lord said, when the Lord spoke to him, the man looked at him with a degree of faith, enough faith to receive that healing. Enough faith. So, had the man simply said to the Lord, "Are you going to carry me down to that water or what?" He wouldn't have received his healing. Had the Lord been saying to him, "Look to me, believe in me, and receive your healing," and the man would have just said, "Excuse me, are you going to take me down to the water or not? If not, I just look for someone else." He wouldn't have received his healing. There was a consequence that he was looking to the Lord. He had faith in the Lord. And so he received his healing. The other people there didn't. What were they looking at? What did they have faith at in that time? See, that story itself is full of consequences. There's consequences in everything. We need to be speaking about consequences to help people to learn to live better. To help people to avoid the bad consequences in life, the worst. And the worst consequence of all, hell. Hell is the worst consequence of all. Hell is a consequence not of necessarily a bad life or a life where you've hurt people. It's not necessarily that. It's a life that hasn't been repented. It's sins that haven't been repented. We all sin. We all fall short. All of us fall short. Right, well, you take care. God bless. And I'll speak to you soon. That's another long, very long one. Normally I'd be doing these while walking around with dogs. But I said, it is a case where I'll be doing them indoors now for a little while. You take care. God bless. I will speak to you soon. Bye-bye.